All right, parents, let's talk about something we all think about but can find tricky to explain: how to teach our kids to navigate life's unexpected moments and really trust their gut. We want to empower them, not scare them. So, how do we turn those big conversations into simple, effective family plans? To help us translate worry into wisdom, we're joined by local attorney Ramona Morgan. Ramona, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much, Desiree. I think this is a great topic, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Okay, so let's start with that kind of uh-oh feeling when something in your gut tells you a situation just isn't right. Parents from all walks of life share the same goal: to help their child trust that feeling. So how do we teach kids that this gut instinct is their first and most important safety tool?
Yeah, this is such a great question because long before human beings even had language, we had instinct, and that's what kept us safe. So that gut feeling that you have is actually your superpower. And the wonderful thing about it is you don't need proof. You don't need to substantiate it in any way. And so what we really like to do is to teach kids and for it to be normalized that they hear that gut, that they respond to it, and that the adults around them will respond to it also.
In law, there's a concept called a bright line rule. So what is it, and what's a key way that parents can use it, like a rule about secrets, to boost safety awareness?
Yeah. So, in law, there are certain rules that once you've, crossed a certain line, it's definitely, you're in the zone of having a violation or a problem in that case. And applying that same concept for children and to parenting is really important. So, one rule is that if someone ever tells you, don't tell your parents, that's an indication that it's something you should go and tell a responsible adult about immediately. And it doesn't mean that the person is doing something horrible. It just means that they've asked you to have a secret, and secrets can be isolating. And so in that case, whether it's something small, really like a piece of candy, or it's somebody accompanying you who wasn't authorized or anything like that, something that happens online, the second that trust is violated, let your parents know or go to a responsible adult.
And Ramona, you're a lawyer, but you're also a mom too, so you understand both sides of being the parent and understanding the legal aspects. So what's your best tip for shifting a parent's role from kind of being that fixer to being more of a coach when a child brings them a problem, so the child learns to navigate those challenges?
Right. So really an interesting thing about being a lawyer is that it teaches you two things. One is to listen without judgment, and the other one is to take instructions. So if a child comes to you and they speak to you about something that's important to them, the first thing is to simply listen, because once you listen, they'll be more likely to tell you more. And then at that point, instead of deciding, well, I'm going to go and confront a teacher, or I'm going to go and do this, you say, what would you like to happen next? And that's a really critical listening phase. And sometimes it's hard to do that as a parent because you want to say, well, this is what I am going to do about it. But when your kids tell you what they want to have happen next, they still have agency, and that way they have control over what happens. And then they trust you the next time something else comes up.
And how can a simply family check-in rule or safety code word give a kid an easy exit from a peer pressure situation without embarrassment?
So sometimes it's hard for kids to articulate how they're feeling in the moment. They might feel like they are somewhere, maybe at a sleepover, maybe on a visit, maybe at sleepaway camp, and they just don't want to be there anymore. And so it's really impossible for them to communicate that with a whole bunch of adults around them. So, and this goes back, this was something that my mom taught us when we were kids and that I've taught to my children. A code word, a phrase, nothing too strange, but something very specific. And you know that once the child says that to you, that you will come to them wherever they are. So the fortunate thing is that after having this for two generations, it's never actually been used. But it was very, very empowering for me as a child to know I had that safety net and that ability to communicate. And I've also given the same thing to my daughters. I think it's very important.
Yes, and then in your legal work, you have a duty of care to a client. As a parent, you have a similar duty to your child. When a kid sees a safety
Yeah.
rule as you being maybe controlling, how do you explain that duty in a way that makes them feel protected, not policed?
Well, one thing is the first thing is I decenter myself, right? Because it's really not about a child taking instructions and then doing what they're told to do. It's really, I'm helping them to be as safe as possible. And their own well being is the most important thing. And so once they understand that, they realize, the more care I take, the person who's really going to be impacted the most is me. or them when they're talking about themselves. And that's really, really important. And they also have to make sure that they're taking care not just of, an arm, a leg, or that kind of physical safety, but also emotional safety. So that helps them to establish boundaries. If they're thinking about friendships, they have a friend who maybe, has a habit of saying things that aren't very nice, or make them feel like they're losing their confidence. All of this helps them to realize ultimately they have a duty to themselves. They have to protect their heart. And they have to think about the dangers that they expose themselves to, and also the good stuff they expose themselves to. And so that's a really important thing for kids to understand, and for you to be in constant dialogue about.
Yeah, a lot of tools that parents and guardians can use going forward. Thank you, Ramona.
Yes.
And to our viewers, you can find out more by heading on over to ramonamorgan.com.